You could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here.
Hello, everyone. Today we're meeting Joey Drolshagen. He is a business consultant, business coach, also the founder of IFGT coaching and the founder of Subconscious Mindset Training Method. Hello, Joseph. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Anna. It's an honor, a blessing to get to be here with you today.
Thank you. So let's start our conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Yeah, Anna, I grew up in a very low-income family outside Detroit, Michigan, and watching my family struggle, my parents struggle financially, and the impact it had on their relationship and working as much as they could and such. And I remember even as a little kid thinking, man, this isn't right. I'd go to a friend's house and the environment was different. The energy of the household was different. And so I said, I'm not going to be like these guys are. But I grew up carrying those same things into my adulthood, and even from a young age, I would use food to pacify, to kind of overcome the upsets and things like that. I somehow learned that at an early age and continued to grow that. And then when I was 22 years old, I started in corporate America, and it's never what I wanted to do, but I was taught that a man gets a job and supports a family and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some retirement, and I bought that hook, line, and sinker. And I was started in corporate America, and I was just miserable right from the start of it and such. I didn't want to do that. And that's, again, started using food, and I started going, using things like gambling. But at 22 years old, I had this spark moment that happened that I felt throughout my whole being, and it was that I want to spend my life inspiring, motivating, and leading people to live better lives. But I didn't even know how to do that for myself at that time. So as I went forward into that, the addiction to food lent itself into gambling, which later on lent itself into alcohol. And it was so as I continued learning this thing, and I'm living this life that I don't want to live, and I'm using those substances and those things to try to cope with life rather than changing it, because change seems so fearful for me to do. And then as I started going forward through that process and such, I'm really grateful for the alcohol, because the food wasn't miserable enough to get me to change. The gambling and the things like that I was doing weren't miserable enough to get me to change. The alcohol hit me so hard and put me so far into my bottom that I got to a point of it truly felt like either death or reaching out and asking for help. And that was a pivotal change in my life. And as I'm doing that, and I'm still studying the works I'm doing, all of a sudden the pieces of things started coming together. And if it weren't for that alcohol, I wouldn't get to be doing what I do today, where I resigned from corporate America about a decade ago, stepped out, got multiple certifications into the works I do today. And now I get to, everything I do it in line of a business, but business growth and such is really the vehicle. The core of what I do is personal transformation. And so I can help people who don't have that dire of addiction, who are I'm saying, to kind of get that motivation, that passion going for the life they want to live, and help them bring that to fruition. So it's just incredible. And I'm amazed that this kid growing up the way I grew up, having the addictions that I've had, can have this kind of an impact on the world.
Right. No, it's incredible to see your journey of evolving to a totally different person. And all of those events that happen in your life, they were on purpose for you to realize what is important and to look inwards first, to understand yourself and what is it that's driving your decisions in life. And like you mentioned, subconscious mindset, that's what's important for us to explore in more detail for ourselves, to really know who we are and what's driving our life. So if you can just elaborate more on the method that you developed and what are the main aspects of it.
Absolutely. So once I like, once the desire to drink and all that happened, the steps I took and the actions and everything else and the help I gained and such, once that was arrested and removed, where I didn't have that desire, I could get a flat tire and not feel like I had to go pound, alcohol for it and things like that. Once that was released, then the real work started, where it was like these doors opening. And I couldn't figure out why it was so hard for me to break away from corporate America. It was so hard for me to break away from relationships that weren't serving me. Like once I got tied to something, I was locked in. And what I realized is we have our conscious mind, right? Our thinking mind. And that's where the knowing of the things we want is and everything else. But what I didn't know when I was in all of that stuff is we have a subconscious mind. And in our subconscious is the programming of everything we've been taught, our patterns, paradigms, beliefs are all reside within there. And that's the voice we hear in our head. That subconscious is what triggers the brain waves to the actions we take and don't take. So when you look at that, the knowing is in the conscious mind, the doing part of it is in the subconscious mind. And that's that gap between the two, because the doing is based on the subconscious conditioning, where the knowing is based on the conscious. So we want to achieve things. We want to have an impact on people in this world. We want our life to matter, but the actions we're taking are not leading to that. That's that disconnect, or that knowing doing gap in our total mindset. So what I've done with the SMT method, which is subconscious mindset training, is I've built a framework that's applied as unique as the individual. So the way you apply it is different than the way I apply it, but it gives you the tools to start opening up that avenue. We start right away with developing a dynamic vision. What is that you want to achieve in life? And then as we start moving into that, we start setting up systems of accelerating habits. It bumps into that conditioning that pulls us away from wanting to do it. Procrastination, all of the things that shy us away. The desire to sit and use food, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be, instead of stepping into and taking actions into that. We bump into that, so then we can shift that and repattern and reprogram, so that we can go forward, and it starts opening up doorways into achieving what we want with a lot less effort on our part.
Yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of it is based on conditioning and certain habits that we develop through life. And we just acquire them without even understanding why. It's either it came from childhood or people surrounding, we just copied somebody. And sometimes when you ask a person why you're doing certain things, they don't even know the answer why. Because it's like on autopilot, every single day, they're just repeating those same actions as a habit. And in order to, kind of like learn something new, I think we first need to unlearn what's been so far, until this point. Because if we take responsibility and say that what I have in my life is of my own creation, I'm the one who's going to change it. So if we first know that for ourselves, it will become easier in terms of knowing that we are the ones that's going to change it for us. And a lot of times people struggle with becoming aware in the first place, because with a lot of distractions nowadays, social media, TV, whatever you name it, you just don't focus on what is important, right? You're just being distracted and pulled into different directions. And the first step is to become aware. Is there certain practices maybe that you use in your life that helped you to first realize that there are certain thinking patterns that are happening that, on the loop, they need to be disrupted? This is not working for me. This is not who I am, and I want to change it. So how to become aware?
Yes. And that's one of the things, to look at what I want. Honestly, it's as simple as looking at, this is what I want life to look like, without like I knew I wanted to have an impact in other people's lives, but here I'm struggling in my own life and picking up alcohol and food and gambling, whatever it may be, to cope with the unhappiness I feel. When we can stop all that, and I'll tell you, I don't work with people who are actively in addiction. So anybody I work with, I help them get that help to get through the addiction, and then we can pick up from there once they get some time into into arresting it. But yeah, when that awareness you talked about, it really is the starting point. And one of the things I tell people, Anna, it begins, anybody with a beginner mindset I can assist. So often we're conditioned, and our culture teaches us that we have to have the answers. We have to know what to do. We have to figure it out. We have to, and if I can just get to a point of saying, we all know a lot, but what can I add to what I already know? Well, if we can get to that point, then all of a sudden we can open up that awareness to see what's really happening. Part of that really is putting down being the victim. So many people I come across are victims of the situations, circumstances, and conditions in their life. But every one of those, when I say that, I'm grateful to alcohol because it brought me to a point that nothing else did, to a bottom that I had to either die or ask for help. That moment was the moment of my change. And so when we look at things, instead of like what's happening to, life happening to me, is why is this happening for me? And we take the judgments out of it, all of a sudden we can start learning. So when we're at that point, that awareness just comes about when we look at what we want to what we're experiencing. And if we're willing to take ownership for our life situations, circumstances, and conditions, then we'll start seeing what belief that's tied to, what conditioning that's tied to, what paradigms or patterns or things like that it's tied to. Now, one of the things I have found is it was impossible for me to identify those within myself because it feels so normal. Anything outside of that feels abnormal. So if I'm living through that conditioning, it feels like that's how I'm supposed to, that's the most normal way to live. So having some assistance in identifying what those areas are that can help point those out to us. I had a lot of help from coaches and to help me identify, why does this seem right to you? Because it keeps causing this, but you keep going back to those same actions and that same thought pattern with that. And once I got to those and was able to identify it, is when change really started happening. And then once I understood the subconscious part of it and that programming and the conditioning that plays over and over and over, it's the voice we hear in our head, right? When there's that argument going on and we're not even a part of it, we're just watching it happen like a tennis match, So it's that awareness there and just opening up why, and start asking, why are my results this? Why is this happening in my situation, circumstances, and conditions? And take ownership for it. You'll be able to see what patterns, paradigms that goes back to.
Right, and like you mentioned, we all feel like it's normal for us, and we don't realize it. And sometimes if we start talking to somebody about what's happening, another person could see from their perspective, and they would point that to your reflected back, and then you see it from different point of view, understanding that it's not really normal, but it's just been familiar for me. It was just the regular path that I've been going through. And because it's familiar, it feels safe in a way, right? Something that is required change, you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable, because that's what it is. And not a lot of people are willing to become uncomfortable and get out of that comfort zone on purpose, even though they know it's better for them. But they don't really all the way in, but they have to in order to change something in their life. And with the help of practitioners, of course, it's easier to do because they provided that safe space. And then you, with a new knowledge you acquired, then you can apply it to your life and see for yourself how everything could change within few months. Sometimes we don't realize, we don't usually underestimate what could be done within a year. We could be in a totally different situation from a year from today, only if we start, go into a different direction and do something with applying that new knowledge into our life. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. It took me years to understand certain things as I developed, and I didn't even know I was developing what's become known as the SMT method. I was just trying to, make my life better, really was my goal. And so I was my guinea pig. And what took me years to achieve, the people I work with now, they achieve it in weeks, so it can happen so quickly. And you're absolutely right. One of the things I tell every person I work with, and I work with business owners, realtors, entrepreneurs, but I also maintain a portion of my business how I started. It's all personal transformation. So somebody that doesn't have a business that's not living life the way they want or achieving what they want, like I work with those people as well. But the whole thing is our comfort zone, our conditioning, living through that conditioning pattern, paradigms, all of that is our comfort zone. And I tell everyone I work with, you're going to have to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable, because what you want doesn't exist in your comfort zone. We have the most control in our comfort zone, but we're also limited to those beliefs and those patterns and those paradigms. So what we have to get outside of our comfort zone, which means to be a little uncomfortable to achieve something different in our life. And then having the support and direction and guidance and everything for somebody doing that is how clients can bring about the changes like you talked about so rapidly. It's surprising. And one of the things I tell people, Anna, is we all have a vision for this life that's unrealistic. The fact that I'm here talking to you right now, and I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, in a low-income family, and all the stuff I've been through and the addictions and everything, it's unrealistic that I would be here talking to you right now. The thoughts of like that, I'm a minister and I deliver Sunday services, and I work with addicts and I do things like that. It's unrealistic that I would be able to have the kind of impact that I have in my life based on where I came from and my conditioning. So a lot of times we get stuck in things when we want something and we go, well, that's not realistic. And so our conditioning is guiding us to live this realistic life, which is, I consider to be mediocre compared to the vision that we have inside of us. So if you think about that, to live unrealistically, it's going to challenge our comfort zone. It's going to challenge our comfort level, really. It'll bring up fear. It'll bring up all the things that'll happen as we step outside of our comfort zone, but it's all normal. So having an avenue or a channel or a method to help maneuver through that will make all the difference in the world.
Right. And also, like you said, everything will come up as we go outside of the comfort zone, as of different fears and worries and doubts. And we have to work through them. We have to let ourselves feel those emotions, because this is what we keep avoiding, to feel certain type of emotions. And actually, once we start doing that, it's gonna have less of power over us. And then we're gonna set ourselves free and be in charge and really making a decision from a powerful place, knowing that this is good for us, not because we are being driven by this type of emotion, but because we chose to do it. So every one of us, we have free will, and we have, a lot of opportunities to choose every single day. But the question is, what kind of choice are we making in the moment? Is it really coming from our true self, from our heart, or we just being driven by something that's been taking that responsibility over our life? So we have to kind of like find ourselves more in the driver's seat, become aware. And also, I think the most important part also to start prioritizing your mental and physical health enough to do something about it. Because if we don't believe that we deserve something, we're not gonna do anything about it. We have to feel that self-love and self-care, to give ourselves the best, to really prioritize it, to invest in our own self-development. And from that point, we can make that shift, we can make that change. And even knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable, we still gonna do it, knowing that it's temporary, it will become easier. But to make that first step, we have to have that desire strong enough to push ourselves, because it has to come internally. You know, even you can be motivated by different speeches and talks, but it's not gonna be strong enough for you to do something about it. You
So,
have to
yeah.
have that internal motivation.
Yeah, so and you said a lot in that and stuff, but you know, one of the greatest motivators there are that we have is pain. Alcohol brought me to a level of pain that I was willing, the fear of the pain that I was in was stronger than the fear of reaching out and asking for help and getting that change. So there's a couple things in that. First off, the number one thing that stops people from bringing about change in their life, from questioning those patterns, paradigms, conditioning, and all that, is fear. And when we right size fear, when we understand that fear isn't never telling us that we can't, it's just saying we haven't done so yet. It's new. So we don't know what to expect. So it's going to be fearful. And you talked about the driver's seat, you know, we can have fear, but we have to learn how to kick it out of the driver's seat of our life, to allowing it so much control. And then as we go through that process of that, and that's part of the SMT, it's all built into it and such. But our conditioning can be so strong. So I use pain. What's it look like living your life for another 3 years or 5 years the way you're living it right now? What's your life going to look like in 5 years? And then I'll go 10. And I'm so like, it's amazing how many people say, oh, I'll probably die. You know, I'll probably die of a heart attack. I'll probably die of the amount of stress that I have every day in my life, or anxiety, or just the emptiness of hollow living because I'm not filling anything that I want to. I believe, you know, that, and using things to stuff down emotions and things like that. I mean, that's all in our conditioning. We're conditioned with fast food. We're conditioned with comfort foods. And, you know, I mean, and I'm just picking food for a moment, but across the board, we're conditioned, you know, with these things. And so stepping into it and breaking that, we have to make that pain of living the way we're living stronger than our fears. And that's part of the SMT method. From the first time I get on the phone and talk to somebody, it's helping them understand not just what it's like living that way, but what it could be like. Bringing about that change. And in doing so, looking at every single day of our life, we never get to repeat. Once it's gone, it's gone. We don't get to hit rewind or things like that. So if we're living like this for day after day, or year after year, or decade after decade, we never get to repeat that time. So bringing up that sense of urgency. And one of the things I'll tell people is, you know, if we broke our arm, we would somehow find the money to get that, you know, to get that repaired and to go for medical treatment. If our car breaks down, we'll somehow figure out the money, no matter what, to get it repaired so that we have it and everything else. But when we look at how we're living this life with our everyday being the most precious commodity we have, we put that in the background. You know, it's a lesser priority than getting the car fixed or mending a broken bone or things like that. When we start bringing more emphasis and putting a higher value on how we're living our life, that's when we can start tapping into that pain of how we are, being higher than that fear, allowing us to then step into bringing about change. But it's a personal choice. I can't choose that for anybody, nor can anybody choose that for me.
Of course, it always comes from ourselves and our understanding of how of a priority is it for me right now. What is more important? What should I focus on? And like you said, because it's not physical, we don't really see it. It's happening somewhere inside on the background. But this is the most important factor, because it's like a reflection of everything that we have in life. And because we're not being taught to look at it from that perspective and knowing the value of it in our life, that's why we don't prioritize it. But the more we start seeing the the connection between our actions, intentions behind our actions, and what we have so far. And like you said, if there is some pain point in our life, something that we don't like and we want to change it. And I like the way that you are talking to your client when projecting in the future, saying, would you live the same type of life 3-5 years from today? Is that something you want in your life? If they say no, you know, they know that they already know they don't want to continue living like that. And they have to know there are solutions, there are answers, and there are people who can help. And the only thing is that's stopping them from doing that is maybe that fear of unknown, of what could happen and how could you help me, you know. And once you clarify that, you see how you can do it. Every one of us can. And nothing really stops you from changing your life, only your decision. You're one decision away from a different life. And once you realize that, and knowing that, you know, everything starts today, and you have to start making changes right now in this single present moment, because that's where the power is. Everything that you do now, you will see the result of it a year, 3 years from today. And that's what we should be aware of and really make it a priority. But I want you to kind of like elaborate more on what people should be focusing on in terms of like daily habits. I would say morning routine or before nighttime that could expedite the process of changing. What could help them to become more aware or look into their life from different perspective? What might expedite the process?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I start every new client that I work with on is in the morning before they get out of bed. I just have them make a statement, and it's a I would love. Today, I would love whatever that is, whatever it is you'd love to experience. Sometimes it's been you know, I'd love to meet a new friend. I'd love to receive a new client. I'd love to find, you know, money laying on the ground. I'd love to, whatever it is, I'd love for somebody to buy me a lunch, you know, and whatever it is. And then build that up, you know, like build up what's it going to feel like and look like when it arrives. Like take a minute and just play with it with your imagination. What is that going to look like when it happens? How am I going to feel when that happens? And then just let it go. And then go about your day. I mean, there's a lot of different practices that people can follow and stuff. I typically help people find what that is for them. I don't tell them what that is for me, you know. And but that's a great tool because it starts opening up the two connection points we have. The strongest connection points we have is our imagination, which as we grow, we're taught to shut that down. Right, through schooling and things like that and stuff, and then our intuition, where we have an inner guidance system, but so many of us are going so strongly from here in our conditioning, that from our head and our conditioning, that we're not open to receiving those directions and that guidance from our intuition. So when you tap into those two, so what happens is the what would I love statement is you put it out there, you put that on and just feel the goodness of it when it happens, and then just let it go. And then go about your day and see what, and watch and see what happens. Watch and see how often that doesn't show up in your life. Because part of the thing we get conditioned into is that there's a mighty God, or there's a mighty this, or there's, you know, leaders, or there's all this power stuff, and we're not one of them. And we shut down how powerful we really are. And one of the things I love in the almost 1,000 clients I've worked with over the past decade is helping them to turn that on and own that power and live through that power that's within. You know, Marianne Williamson has a quote, I never say it right, but she says, you know, being powerless is not our greatest fear. What we are really afraid of is how powerful we really are. You know, so when I help people start recognizing that, and then they can start living through that, that starts opening up doorways to just amazing, incredible things. And I'll tell you one other thing, Anna, when I first started reaching out for help with the alcohol, somebody had told me, they said, that people like in addiction will always talk about, the yets. I've yet to lose a house, car, job, family, things like that. But they never talk about that other side. What have I yet to achieve because alcohol's blocked me? And man, when I heard that, that opened the doorway for me with getting the help I needed and going forward. Because I knew in my heart that I wanted to, my life, the purpose of my life was to inspire, motivate, and lead millions of people to live better lives. But I never got to tap into it when I was living through that conditioning and those addictions. And since I broke out of that, that's the reason the name of my company is IFGT Coaching, because the IFGT stands for It's Freaking Go Time. And it really is. It's time to quit playing small. It's time to quit making the inches and inches of progress and step into miles of change and bringing about that greatness and bringing out that, the impact that my life can have. And one of the core things, the reasons that drives me into doing what I do is because I know each person I work with that implements that SMT brings about change and evolves and steps into their power in their life. They have an impact that nobody else can have on this world, in their community, that ripple effect and all of that. So it just continues to grow that side of things.
Yes, and we should step in our power. Like you said, every one of us has that access to inner wisdom. If only we trusted ourselves, believed in ourselves enough, knowing that we have everything we need to achieve anything that was set for us, all the goals and inspiration that we can have it all. But the only thing that's stopping us from doing that is that belief in our own ability to achieve those things. And like you said, once you open up the opportunity and tap into your power and intuition, and using the imagination as another faculty of your mind to construct of what you want and really go all the way to get it, it will just open new opportunities for you, and you will see how you meet certain people, something is happening, something that's supporting your decision in life. And again, you're not just alone here in this world, you're being part of something bigger, and you have a mission, you have a purpose. Every one of us has, and yes, we have our unique abilities and talents to serve other people. If only we again step into that power and allow ourselves to be that best version, that's where we see the magic happens and the ripple effect and how we affect other people.
And none of us were meant to live. We experience addiction, we experience hardships, we experience, things like that, but none of it's ever meant to bring us down. What happens is we know in our authentic self who we are, what our purpose is, what our mission is, all of that is there. But the conditioning we receive from the time we're born, and we don't get to pick who our parents are or where we get that conditioning and things like that. So, but that conditioning is what clouds that up. And then when we take, like when something happens, like, when I first kind of crossed that line into addiction and then was aware of it, I lessened who I saw me to be from that authentic self that I really am because of that. So I was less than, and I went forward and I was less than. The fact that my family struggled financially meant that I was less than somebody who grew up in a wealthy family, and all of that led to that. And really, that's all false. We are that authentic self. We are that power. We are that person who came here and with a mission and a purpose and have an impact on other people's lives. But as long as we live with that clouded over, we won't ever achieve that. And I get to work with people who are retired from, they've gone their whole life, they've raised families, they've lived a whole career, and now they're in retirement going, man, I feel like my life has not meant anything. And I can help them tap into that. What is that impact? What is that legacy? What is it? What is that authentic? And as we start bringing into that, it's amazing what the visions people that I work with come up with, like based on getting in tune with that authentic, getting rid of all the scrap and the things covering it and clouding it over and stuff, and open that up.
Yeah, we just need to remove that cloud or that fog that we have and really start seeing clear and knowing what we want. Also, sometimes when you ask a person, what is it that you want in your life? And they don't know. We have to be clear on the goals that we set for ourselves and what we're trying to achieve, because it's like a GPS. We need to know where we're going, not just rumbling around, but with that goal set and the drive that we have, that desire, and knowing that we have everything that we need in life. Also, we have to be grateful what we have. Like, sometimes people more focused on lack of what they don't have, right?
Yes.
And only if we be grateful for what we already have and use those tools that's provided for us in order to achieve what we want in life, we will see again more coming in rather than focusing on what we don't have and complaining about it.
Well, and one of the things is I don't work off of goals. I do a lot of business coaching and I work with corporations and things like that with consulting and stuff. And we talk goals because it's a business term. I don't work off of goals though. The reason I don't work off of goals is they're hit or miss. I work off of visions because a vision is fluid. So what happens is somebody gets a vision, and what I call a dynamic vision. I have road mapping tools that we go through that process and they get a vision. And as that vision starts opening up, it's okay that vision changes then, because as we grow and expand, our vision is as alive as we are. So our vision will change as well. So when we're led by a vision, you can be pushed by your pain, which we talked about. The other avenue, the one that I find to be much more exciting, is we can be pulled by a vision. When we get a dynamic vision, that pull of that vision of what could be gets so exciting. We no longer need pain to bring about change. The excitement of the vision is stronger than the fear of something new and happening. And so as we step into that, I agree with everything you're saying though, as far as with the vision, once we get that vision, it can be so easily and so quickly that we can start shifting and realizing, why do I even have this belief? Why have I followed this for so long? Here's what I really believe. Based on coming, because we have a different belief system when we're coming from our conditioning and that clouded over. I love that you said that cloud, that living in that cloudiness. We have a different belief system there than when we're living expansive, when we're living in our power, when we're living from our authentic self.
Right. And that vision, it's different for every one of us, but we know what we want to leave in this world, like what is our legacy would be if only we step into that power. And then we start seeing what is it that, stops us from growing further and kind of expanding more and pushing more boundaries, and knowing that also, I've noticed the more we try and see for ourselves the evidence of something that we already achieved, like some small, I would say, wins, if we celebrate it along the way, we reaffirm our ability to do it, and it grows the confidence as well. Don't you think?
Absolutely. And that's everything I do with every coaching session, group session, whatever I'm doing. It's built around celebrating successes, because so often we look at what needs to be fixed or what we didn't do great or what we did wrong or things like that. And the successes, I remember back in my addiction, I got my pilot's license for single engine aircraft, and I was in this group and we got together and they had cake and they had all this stuff and everything. And the, somebody goes, man, what's it feel like to be a pilot? And honest to my heart, I said, anybody can do it. You just need the time and the money. Mm-hmm. And somebody in that group said, man, you are so afraid of being arrogant that you don't know a healthy self-esteem. I didn't know that about myself back then. Since that time, I celebrate every night before I go to bed. I do a 5-minute writing thing. It takes 5-7 minutes. And I write down I start with what are my 5 successes for today? Because when we can get into that mode of seeing where we're being successful, it can cover over that clouded side a little bit, so it's not a fix all, but it helps progress along those lines. And then I write down my gratitudes, and then I'll write down my 5 top priorities for the next day. And I do that at nighttime, before putting my head on the pillow, because I believe my day begins when I put my head on the pillow. So I want to start the day with those thoughts, and when I'm doing a coaching session, we'll start with successes. When I'm doing a group, we'll start with successes. And as we celebrate, and I'll tell you something, Anna, is part of my at the end of my corporate career, I was helping organizations like $100 million plus organizations with 400 plus employees, things like that were in bankruptcy to get back into profitability. And the record timing we've done it in is like 8 months. And what was really the core of it all is, instead of talking about everything that's going wrong and why we can't, and all the hurdles and everything else, is we started looking at the successes. What's going good here? Let's talk about what's going good. And all of a sudden, and they used to tease me and call me Mr. Over-Optimistic, until we had a breakthrough experience, and all of a sudden people started buying into it. And now all of a sudden, as an organization, they're talking about what's good, and we start building on that, and we start experiencing more good showing up, until we had business owners within 8 months walk in and drop $12 million into the organization and take them from a 3-day-a-month operation to a 5-day-a-week operation. Wow. These tools work. They work in personal life, they work in business, but it's the applying of them, it's the application of them. And I imagine that somebody could work on their own and bring about these changes. I couldn't. The clients and the people I work with have tried on their own for years or decades and haven't been able to. So being able to shortcut that into 12 weeks and bringing about mighty changes, and for businesses, I have a 6-month program, but being able to do it in a much shorter time and get longer lasting, bigger changes coming from it is the benefit of it.
Yes, definitely. And we should always think about how we can, invest in our own future, because we have to prioritize our own life enough to invest in it. And maybe it requires to hire somebody, but it's going to provide you that, kind of like a boost in your life, some push where you couldn't do it yourself. And now you are more equipped with the tools and everything that you need to progress even further. And you don't have to waste time. You can ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help, because a lot of times people look at it as a weakness, and it's not true. It's actually a courage. Like it is courageous to ask for help to bring yourself the life that you want. You have to be strong enough to do it. And again, with a lot of tools and practitioners available nowadays, it's just it's hard, not to find somebody. And I want you to also share with us, if somebody would like to find you online, how can they do it?
Yeah, yes. And before I say it, let me just say, one of the ways I differentiate what I do from a lot of coaching programs, things like that, and everything else, is I don't have an ABC plan that's going to get you to D. What I've developed and what worked for me, none of those ever worked for me. What does work for me is when I develop the avenue for the pathway of transformation, and the way it's applied is unique to every individual applying it. That's what seems to bring about the greatest results. And anybody listening to this, wherever you are, whatever is going on, if you want more out of life, you can reach out to me at coachwithjoey.com, coachwithjoey.com, and schedule a 10-minute call with me, and we can get on and talk about what are some areas. If you're in addiction and you don't want to be, I'll help you get some avenues and some contacts and things like that there. If you're not in addiction, but you're just unhappy in your life, you're tired of that overriding stress and that fatigue, reach out. Let's spark a conversation It doesn't cost you anything. You're important enough to me that I'll give you my time and see if I can help you get that avenue going for you and get you some tools to start moving you in that direction. And again, it's coachwithjoey.com.
Thank you, Joseph. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. And as we close, what would be the thought for today for our listeners?
That you are more powerful than your situations, your circumstances, and the conditions surrounding you. That you have an amazing power within you.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.